Greetings and welcome to another conversation with the filmmaker here at the Regent Theater. My name is Leland, and it's my pleasure right now to be talking to Danny Tedesco, the filmmaker, director of Immediate Family, which we are premiering part of a one-night national screening event on December 12th with encore screenings on the 13th and 14th. Hello, Denny. How you doing?
I'm excellent, Leland. Good seeing you.
Yeah, it's been a while, and I was just doing a little research because I couldn't quite remember, but we first worked together back in December of 2011.
It's funny you said that because I was trying to think as we were starting this, I'm thinking, when was that? So it was that far back. That's
Yeah,
when I started. I think Arlington was one of the first theaters, or Regent was the first theater we went to raise money for the Wrecking Crew at the time.
yeah, we actually ended up doing two fundraisers with you. That was the first.
Yeah.
And, the response was great right off the bat. And little did we know, or at the time, how long a haul it would continue to be for you.
Well, yeah, because so I started that film, The Wrecking Crew, in 96. If you remember, I got through the festivals in 08, 09, did extremely well. And that's when I ended up going, no one's helping me. I have all these awards, but no one wants to help.
Yeah,
I still had to raise another $500,000 to get the film out. And that was the idea, is let's get it out there, at least have sneak screenings, fundraisers, any which way we could, and everything but a bake sale, I tell people. And I just remember going to the Regent and saying it was so successful. It was one of those big ones where we could raise a few $1,000s and pay off the music. And that was the start of it, actually.
yeah, and talk about a labor of love and the years you put behind it. And just to remind people or let people know who didn't know, you this came about as really a tribute to your father, Tommy Tedesco, who was one of the key members of the Wrecking Crew, who passed away. And you saw that there was an incredible legacy here that had to be captured. And did you ever? And now the film, now that it's out and been out for a few years, and uh, run into people all the time and mention the film, and I think it's a favorite documentary of many people out there.
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate. The film brought a lot of joy to a lot of people, not because of me. It's just, it's the music, it's the guys themselves. They're so, you feel there's a connection between the audience and these musicians. And I think this next film, Immediate Family, will have the same thing. I think we relate to them, and you don't have to be a musician to relate to them.
Yeah, well, we've been showing the trailer. As I think we mentioned, this is part of our series we launched this fall, midweek music, movies, and more.
Oh, excellent.
And, we've been building a great audience and getting really great response to the trailer. So really looking forward to hosting that. And I wanted to ask you about, because I was thinking about the word family, because obviously the connection with your dad and the Wrecking Crew, and then realizing that these musicians who work together day in and day out, whether in the studio or touring, really become a family, and in some cases more of a family than their real blood relatives, because they spend more time with them.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about
Well, I mean, it's
that.
interesting because when I was approached to do after Wrecking Crew, that came out 2015, and 2019, the producers came to me, uh, Greg Rishling and Jonathan Sheldon and Jack Pite. They came to me and said, "What do you think of this idea about the guys from the section, which were the guys in the 70s that did all the work for um, Jackson and James Taylor? They were the touring group and recording group. And they had this new band, well, they kind of their own band called Immediate Family." And I knew of the guys. Listen, they're all legends. And I knew about the band because, it's seen it locally. I hadn't seen them play yet. And I thought, ooh, there's my hook. And it's the same thing how they named the thing and named their band is Danny Coach Mar. Someone wanted him to come out to do a concert, and he said, "We'll call it, Danny Coach Mar's, whatever." And he goes, "No, no, just call it immediate family because that's what we are, brothers." And my hook on this was I got something that I could relate to and go back to the Wrecking Crew because at the beginning of the Wrecking Crew, I started the film with a line said, "This is the story of my father and his extended family, the Wrecking Crew." So in a weird way, they are, like you said, they are brothers and sisters. They can spend more time with each other than their own families. And, good or bad, that's what the way it is. And a lot of occupations are like that.
Yeah.
You know, we're all trying to make a living and we're all trying to make, put food on the table, put our kids through school. And you realize sometimes you go too far, not too far, you do what you can, but you have to balance life. And I think that's one of the great things that, Russ Kunkel says in this film. He said, I asked him, how do you balance it? He goes, some things you can't get back. And he teared up,
Mhm.
you know, and I think that's really important in these films.
Well, what's really interesting to me, among other things, is the connection between the two films and kind of the chronology or the timeline. So here you've got the Wrecking Crew, the studio musicians and musicians that played behind thousands of records in the 60s and 70s mostly. And then it's almost like this is a continuation.
Oh, it's the perfect setup. As
Yeah.
someone like, I want to believe my father's in heaven going, all right, you've had a few years off. You suffered enough. Here it is. Let me give you the thing to do next. And it was like, and you remember at the end of the Wrecking Crew, there's the end of their careers, meaning like the end of their time, not careers, but the end of their era. And it was went to Lou Adler. And I said, Lou, you did Tapestry, you know. I said, did you make a conscious decision to, change it up? New sound, new musicians. He goes, oh no, absolutely not. He goes, when I did Carole King's Tapestry, he goes, she brought in her friends. She brought in James Taylor and Danny Kochmar. And so it was like someone saying, okay, here, that was in the Wrecking Crew, the end of the Wrecking Crew. Here we are now. And this is the start of this era, the singer-songwriter era. And it couldn't have been a better start because that album, well, Sweet Baby James is really, oh, hello, time to have an interview. Or is it time for my meds? No. Time for your medication, Mr. Tedesco. The what the Sweet Baby James Tapestry, that whole era is really the start of these guys' careers. Leland Sklar, when he's asked to go on the road with James Taylor and Sweet Baby James, he's still in college. He's still in the science department, not even the music department. And they find him at a rehearsal, at a band rehearsal, and James flips out, goes, "I met the bass player of my dreams," and so that started it. And then from that point on, they start their careers.
One of the things, and I really noticed, and actually in the Wrecking Crew as well, but because it's so fresh with seeing immediate family, are the personalities, the characters, the trademarks, the idiosyncrasies, I don't know what you call them, with each one of the musicians, you really capture that the real portrayals or vignettes of these guys. Like it's like, yeah, in the big category, they're all incredible musicians.
Yeah.
But they're so different personality wise. And like all of us and like families themselves, have so many different types within a family.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because there's such characters. You got Waddy, or you got Danny and Waddy, like the two Jewish guys from New York, real New York. And then you got Russ Kunkel, the Zen master, like you can just see it. When you interview these people, when you interview when you interview like Phil Collins and you interview um, Carol and Jackson and James, they all talk about them. And you could tell they all have the same feeling about their person, each of them, how their characters do come out as their friends. And then you got Leland, the jokester. I mean, he was an amazing musician, but he's the guy that's, he's light, he'll bring the humor to it. And then you got the new guy, Steve Pistel, who's I call him the fifth Beatle.
Yeah.
He's the kid in the group. He's 65, which, and so I think they all have their own personalities, and they all have their duties as band members,
One of the things I like to ask filmmakers, especially documentary filmmakers that I've talked to, is what are some of the things, especially for the people who do see the film and maybe watching this before or afterwards, what are some of the things that you had to leave out, or maybe you regret having to leave out because you can only do so much?
Yeah, no, there's so much. And that was the weird thing, is this film was very different than The Wrecking Crew. If you remember, The Wrecking Crew it took 19 years to get it out. I never stopped interviewing people. So I had, hundreds and hundreds of hours extra. This one, we started it, and I had a meeting with the band one day. The next day they said, yes, we're in. Well, let's do it. And they said, Carole King can be part of this. She said she'll be able to do the interview in 3 weeks. And I panicked. I was like, 3 weeks? I'm not, I was like, okay, but you BS your way through meetings. You still have to learn. You still have to research. And I had an idea what the story was going to be, but you don't really know. You learn on the spot. And so I quickly got into it. But the love for these guys was so extraordinary. When I mean, there's no gatekeepers. There's nobody saying, well, let me check. Let me see if they're available to do an interview. There was none of that. So it was instant. I had Carole King, Jackson Browne, James Taylor, Lou Adler, Phil Collins, and on and on. It was within 2 months I had most of my folks, my stars in the picture. What happened is COVID came and stopped us in our tracks. So that limited more interviews. Not that we needed them.
Yeah.
It was just, it focused the story more, because I did want to take on another part of the story, which was I wanted to call it immediate family and friends. So there was interviews with Bob Glaub, the great bass player, Jim Keltner, the other drummer. I mean, there were so many other people we could have interviewed and did interview, and we just couldn't make it work because you have to focus the story. There's a great Linda Ronstadt. She cracks me up. There was a great story of her, the bus, new driver in Detroit, and he makes the wrong turn and goes over the border to Canada. So now they have to make a U-turn and come back through customs through America. And everybody's in a panic because now they got all their drugs on them. So everybody's throwing thousands of dollars of drugs out the window of the bus. And Linda's wearing these like little elf fairy lights on her. And she's dressed up in a little Boy Scout outfit and looking really funky. And she goes, I'll talk to the customs person because I have a brother that's a cop. I know how to. And the road manager says, no, you don't. You get back in the bus. But it cracked me up because I could just imagine all these guys throwing all their pot and all their other drugs out the window. But, there's things you just lose. You got to tell the story. But there's so much of it. That's why the outtakes. That's what I'm doing now is actually just before I got to you is cutting an outtake. Waddy Wachtel going into a liquor store to buy a pack of cigarettes, and he hears Lonely Boy, the Andrew Gold song, and his solo's on, and his killer solo. And he realizes he's looking around, looking for, he doesn't have his wallet on him. He goes, oh, and he starts thinking, do I tell the guy that's me on the radio? He goes, I'm not. No, he goes, nah, I just walked out like a chump. We talked about the different things that don't make it in the film. When you're trying to cut something, you start in these documentaries, you go one way, and then You think you're going to make, and then all of a sudden things change. Sometimes an interview will change a whole, the perspective. One of the things I wanted to put in there, two of the things I wanted to put in there was radio. FM radio was a big part of these guys' careers in the music industry. AM radio, if you remember, it was, you had 2 minute, 3 minute, a 3 minute song was long on AM radio. So FM comes around and things start changing. Now they're playing longer, songs. And so not just longer songs, but they're, guys are able to do solos, and then LPs become part of the change. LPs now have credits of the guys. So there's this whole thing about LPs, playing on FM radio where a DJ will play a whole side, maybe the whole album on FM, where they would never have done that in AM radio. So sequencing became part of the genre of the time, the LPs. Hey, what's going to be the first song and the last song on the A side? What's going to turn, you got to get up and flip it over. And what's going to start the B side? And that became a big deal. Even Lou Adler and Carol talked about it. It was a big deal how they were going to sequence Tapestry and have a theme. It's interesting because the music industry started with 45s, the rock and roll era, starts with 45s, which are singles, goes to LPs. Now we're back to singles in a weird way, and you go to Shopify or Apple, whatever, you play one song. But that time period was a change. It pushed FM radio and LPs pushed touring. And the difference between the touring of the 60s and 70s was also a huge change. Technology was much better live in the 70s. They had monitors. You could listen, the playback. You, as a musician, you can hear yourself. In the old days, you couldn't hear anything. And it was crap. I mean, it really was not great. And so when touring starts taking off in the 70s, the record companies start going, this is a good way to, promote the album. We'll put some money into it. So now the guys are getting paid better as they go on the road. You never left in the 60s. You did not want to be the guy leaving town. A road guy for, let's say, some of those acts, it didn't pay well. You weren't getting paid well. So you weren't going to leave your studio gig. If you were so busy, like my father was so busy, he would never have taken a road gig. It was, that meant things aren't well. Because if you take a road gig, there's 8 other guitar players ready to take your spot in the studios. And when you're working around the clock from 63 to 69, 70, you don't take that chance. And that was a change. And then when these guys come in, I remember saying to Peter Asher, I said something about them being legends. He laughed at me. He goes, they weren't legends. They were our friends. And he's right, because when they're doing Tapestry and they're doing Sweet Baby James and they're doing all these albums, they're at the beginning of their careers. Like I said, Lee just went out of, just left school for a month. Never went back, but he left school. So they didn't have a lot of experience in the recording industry. I think Russ probably had more at that point because his 3 albums of 71 and 72 is Joni Mitchell's Blue, Sweet Baby James with James, and then Tapestry with Carol. I mean, you could end your career there and have a good career just having those 3 under your belt. Those are the stories I love.
Well, congratulations on all of the festival awards you've gotten.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. We got 16 awards, and we had 27 festivals. I'm just thrilled. The film plays very well. It's not going to change the world. I make films that I want to see and enjoy watching, and people get a kick out of it.
Well, it's also about bringing people together. I mean, I often think about that in terms of what we do with the theater. You bring these different communities together.
Absolutely.
And for a film like this, where there is so much music, so many, songs that people know in and out, some of their, favorite tunes growing up, favorite artists, and the educational aspect too is like, oh, I didn't know that, I didn't realize that, and yeah, so that's what makes it a pleasure to be able to host your film, and so many, there are so many great music documentaries, and the chance, yeah, people can stream things, but there is nothing like
There-
showing on the big screen.
I agree 100%. I mean, seeing a film like this, there's a lot of films you don't need to see with obviously an audience, but there is a reaction when you're hearing the music. There is a reaction when there's a funny line and the audience cracks up. It's some of it's subliminal, but when you see the heads bopping in the audience and you see, the lips moving, singing along, it's really cool. And I think these films do bring, our country is so split, in our politics. This is one of the few things that, you can agree on. If you like it, you like it. It has nothing to do with blue, red, or pink or brown. It has nothing to do with any color. It's you like the song, you like it, move on.
Yeah. Well, thanks for this opportunity to talk to you. We're sorry we won't have you in person in December, but I think you'll
Uh,
be busy with the LA event and some other stuff going on.
yeah, I'm just thrilled you guys are a part of this, by the way. It really means a lot to me knowing our past, being there and, like you said, 2011. That's over 10 years ago, 12 years now. Amazing.
Yeah, if there's a history there. And before I let you go, is there anything you're thinking of for the future, or is it like,
Yeah.
yeah?
I have another one. I'm in the works of it now. It's Wolfman Jack. I am just jumping all. I'm just loving that one. I interviewed uh, Richard Dreyfuss, Johnny Rivers, and the families behind it. Wolfman's families behind it, and that is another family. It's another story that I could grab onto because the guy loved family, loved his friends and family. And I think
Great.
that's really the coolest thing. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, we'll look forward to that. And again, we're going to be screening your uh, brand new film, Immediate Family, and December 12th, Tuesday. That's part of a one-day only national release, correct?
Yep. And when the theaters are picking it up, they'll do more than one day. Um, hopefully, and then then it goes to streaming later.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for being here, for all the great work you've been doing in the celluloid scene. And
Yeah. And please, like I've told audiences, please follow us. Please follow your films that you see at these theaters. It's really important that you spread the word about films like ours. You can follow us at immediatefamilyfilm.com or www.film. If you go to Immediate Family, you'll get a family therapist, which is fine too. So you can't lose. If you just go Immediate Family Film, you'll get us. But yeah, check out the outtakes and have a great series of films.
thank you. Thank you, Danny. It's been a pleasure.